Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yep.
Awesome. So thank you so much again for joining us tonight. We're really excited for this event. Today, the Women Who Code team within CWIT is going to be partnering with the social media team. We're going to be having a open guided discussion about their journey in and out of tech and how they got into CWIT, their experience throughout life, and we're really excited for it. So Tara, if you want to start with the introductions, go ahead.
Sure. So what we're going to do is that this is going to be a little bit more of an open discussion. So at any time, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, or you can come off mute and just say it. So we're going to be the Women Who Code team. We're going to be moderating the discussion, but we'll also be adding some cool inputs from our own experiences as well, because we're all amazing and experienced women in technology wanting to share our experiences so that you can learn as much as you can. So for my team, I run the Women Who Code Student Alliance team. I'm the lead intern. My name is Tara. I am a computer science and marketing major here on campus, and I'm a senior. We have Claire Contos, who, and my experience was that I was a program manager intern at Microsoft on Outlook last summer. We have Claire Contos, who worked for McDonald's as a product manager intern with doing a lot of cool work with accessibility. She is a senior studying informatics with a minor in human-centered interaction or computing.
Human-computer interaction.
Human-computer interaction, as well as a cognate in business, right?
Yeah.
Yes, awesome. Then we have Manvi, who, okay, hello. Oh, it's Rachel, okay. So then we also have Manvi. She interned as an engineering intern last summer with NASA. She is a intelligent systems engineering major here, and she is a junior. And then we have Shay, who interned with Amazon Web Services as a data analyst intern, and she is actually studying computer science and business as well. So that is the Women Who Code team, and then I'm going to pass it off to Claire Silcox to kind of introduce her team as the social media team at the Center of Excellence for Women in Technology.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Tara. So to start off, I am Claire, and I'm the social media lead intern here at the center. And I'm a senior as well, majoring in marketing and sustainable business through the Kelley School of Business. And then my past internship experiences include 2 internships with IU, as well as an internship with Career Contessa, which is an online career resource built inclusively for women. And then I'm going to pass it off to Shannon, who will go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Shannon McGuire. I'm a senior studying information systems at the Kelley School of Business. I am a social media intern at CWIT. I have 2 internships currently on IU's campus that I'll be talking about, as well as my intern experience with Grant Thornton. And then Catherine can introduce herself next.
Woohoo. So hi, I'm Catherine. I'm currently a senior. I study interior design, and I am one of the social media interns. Some of my past experience, a little bit different. I had an internship in Fort Wayne at an architecture firm called Bonavita Architecture, as well as, my internship here at the center, and I'm also a teacher's assistant right now. So, yeah.
Awesome. So the way that we're going to try to run this event is that we have 3 kind of topics that we want to dive into, again, in a very open discussion type of manner. So we're going to see a lot of bouncing back and forth, just kind of asking each other to elaborate on our experiences. Our first topic is going to be about how we got into tech, how did we get introduced to the world of technology, and how that's played a role. The second topic being internship and experiences. And then the third topic, who are we outside of just tech? So because we are women who also have interest outside of it. So for each of these sections, we're gonna have 15 minutes, and then we're gonna have 5 minutes at the end for Q&A at the end of each of these sections. So if you find something that's relevant, don't be afraid to drop a question in the chat, because we're gonna go ahead and address that before moving on to the next section. If we have time, we can address questions that don't get asked. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it off to Claire to get our conversation started.
Thank you so much, Tara. And before I actually ask the first question, I'm going to go over some guidelines that we at CWIT like to say before we begin our events. So first, we ask that each of you observe our event code of conduct. These norms have been coined at Harvard as the 4C framework for community because each value begins with the letter C. Our center community norms as we get started are as follows: curiosity and desire to learn. We invite you to ask questions and seek answers, courage to listen to and hear different perspectives. We ask you to make space for varying ideas, candor and openness with a hope for continued ongoing conversations when we leave here. We hope you carry the conversation beyond this event. Courtesy and respect, we can assume that we all operate from a place of good intentions. If anyone here is unwilling and or not comfortable committing to these 4 community norms, that is okay, but we respectfully invite you to leave the session at this time while we move forward. Now, with that behind us, let's get started with the panel discussion. So the first question we have today is, what made you interested in technology to begin with? And let's start with the social media team. And I believe Shannon has a wonderful answer for this.
Yes, thank you, Claire. Getting interested in technology, I always think is a very broad statement because I always like to think technology is everywhere in your life. But the big thing that really stuck with me was actually a class that I took at IU my freshman year. And this was a class called K201. It's Computers in Business. And it's a class that a lot of students have to take. And it's basically focusing on Excel and how to use Excel, just basics. And during this class, you kind of go through and you're put in different situations or you're focused on different businesses and you realize, or at least I realized in my life, that you can take a lot of these skills and put them anywhere, whether or not you're working in healthcare, you're working in education, in technology, accounting, no matter your field. Excel is just a tool that can really help any business you're part of. And that's kind of really what drove me to technology, because I realized even if I have a passion for one specific asset, technology can let me focus on that passion and use technology to make it a little bit better. And it also helps that I did understand how to use Excel functions, but I really do appreciate that class for opening my eyes to how far technology can take me in life and driving that interest in me to change my major to a technology major.
Yeah, thank you. That was really insightful. I kind of have a similar experience, but it actually started before college. I was really lucky. I had a sister that came to IU 2 years earlier, and she actually was not really sure what she wanted to do coming into IU. And after about a year here, she figured out that what informatics was. So she was really interested in it. And so I had my senior year, I had my sister saying, you should look into any kind of technology, any kind of coding classes that my high school offered. And I actually was able to get into a web design class at the second semester of the full year web design class and absolutely fell in love with it. I thought it was the coolest thing that you could write a piece of code and it would output onto a screen of whatever you wanted to output. So I thought that was one of the most incredible things. And so I was really lucky that coming into IU, I knew exactly what I wanted to study and was able to go straight into informatics. And I've loved it ever since. And it's taught me so many different spaces of technology where informatics gives me the path to go into a really human-centered space or a design-centered space. And I also have really been interested in the business part of technology as well. So I've had a really broad spectrum of experience throughout my 4 years with informatics and IU, but that was my first interest in it in high school.
That's super cool, Shannon and Claire, about how your journey into tech got started. I kind of want to pass this question to Claire Silcox about what do you recommend when it comes to getting people involved in technology?
Yeah, of course. So I think first and foremost, when I started at IU as a freshman, I also had no idea what I wanted to do, kind of like Claire's sister. And so I took like 4 different major track courses my first semester freshman year. and ended up choosing none of those, weirdly enough. But I just kind of realized that when you're starting out in college, it's really important to kind of just try any and every major and class that sounds interesting to you, because you might find one that you didn't even know existed. And so while I didn't end up doing that my freshman year, and I just kind of ended up going into the business school second semester kind of on a limb, I've really found that taking classes within the business school that were interesting has led me to kind of find that passion in technology and find that passion for social media. So right now I'm in a digital marketing class that I really love. So that's kind of learning about how to use social media to grow your business, how to use SEO focused content to grow your audience, as well as kind of like building a website and all of that stuff. So I think taking classes is probably the best way to kind of get into that tech industry, kind of figure out what you like and don't like. But then in terms of more of like an informal education, I've really kind of found that I've self-taught myself a lot of the like design skills that I know right now that I really needed for internships starting my junior year. So junior year, I applied for this internship. I didn't have any experience in design, even though it wanted me to like create flyers, create social media content, but I applied anyways. And I didn't think I was going to get it, but I ended up kind of landing an interview and then landing the position, and then had to quickly learn how to kind of use Illustrator and InDesign, which are not super intuitive or easy to use platforms when you first start out. So I learned that kind of taking classes through maybe like a Skillshare platform or that LinkedIn learning service that all IU students have, as well as just watching YouTube videos, was really kind of like the best way to teach myself those skills. And so that's kind of what I would recommend for people who are interested in technology, but just don't quite know where to start or kind of need to learn those skills quickly.
Yeah, I love that. Big ditto to everything about classes. I think that's one of the best ways to go about it. And something else that I would add is, I think getting into tech is a really aggressive term. Like, what does that mean? What does it mean to be in tech? And I think a better way to think about it is maybe to say, like, are you fluent in like the things happening in tech world? So for me, that sometimes looks like, scrolling through Product Hunt or, Hacker News or whatever that may look like. I think there's so many things that as long as you can verbalize like what's happening, like you are a part of the technology world. Like you don't necessarily need any of these hard skills. So I think that's really cool. There's a bunch of really cool email newsletters. Like one of my favorite ones for design is Case Study Club. It's about a bunch of like UX case studies, which I think is really interesting. I'm sure there's other ones that I'm completely forgetting, but you don't actually have to know how to do any of these things to know what the things are. And so on that note, so how do you think if you were to be, as some of us are not actually computer science majors, how does a non-tech major play a role into your internship with CWIT, or just any job specifically, and how do you think your skills have transferred over? And so I think Catherine, you want to start?
Mm-hmm. So my major is interior design, and right off the bat, you might not think that that has a whole lot to do with tech or anything like that. There are a lot of preconceived notions about interior design from HGTV, I think, in the general world, but there is so much more than just, furniture layouts or anything like that. In my major, we are very computer heavy school rather than more like hand drafting. So we use the computer all the time with various different things, whether it's, projects that I'm using like 3D software for, or like graphic design. When we are doing presentations, we kind of had to learn graphic design kind of on our own. As Claire kind of touched on before, we use Illustrator, InDesign, Photoshop, and we learned a little bit of that during school, but a lot of it was also self-taught. So I just kind of needed to know it in order to, excel at my degree and get further ahead. But how that relates to CWIT is that I have all of this graphic design knowledge. And now that we do all of this social media, graphic design is really ingrained in social media everywhere you go. Like every little detail, someone is going to, pick apart. So I definitely take a lot of those skills that I've learned from my interior design classes and think about them more graphically. And that helps me a whole lot in my job at CWIT. As for skills that are transferable to like a tech job, I think the Adobe software is super important for so many different people to know, no matter what degree you're going to go into. I think graphic design plays a role in everything you do. Even just this PowerPoint, graphic design has everything to do with it. So I think those skills are super important. Even if I went into more of like a tech related job, I think I would have all of those skills that are necessary to do that. And I think I'm going to pass it off to Tara to also add on to that.
Sure. So one thing, just to preface it, so I'm a marketing major too, right? So like, let's just forget the fact that I'm studying computer science and I know anything technology there, because computer science doesn't directly connect to marketing. But one thing that everyone has kind of noticed over the past couple of years is that data is playing such a huge role in the way we make decisions. You can be an interior designer, you can be a marketer, you can be a storyteller, and you're still going to need to find something that helps support what you're trying to do, whether that be a plot, a story, a campaign, etc. So when it comes to marketing, I think one thing that we always underestimate about ourselves is our creativity and where our sources of creativity come from. I'm one of those people in that clubhouse of saying, I think everyone is creative. I think it just takes figuring out the way that you piece things together and what's unique about that, drawing from your own experiences and not being shy to kind of use that authentic self. So a lot of my marketing degree was kind of looking into what did I find appealing? It may not be the aesthetic that's like in the mainstream, but what do I find appealing? What is where are my passions lying? How can I kind of connect those together? An example is that I do a lot of work with leadership training and outdoor training and climbing. And I realized that I love the greens and the blacks and the whites, like shades of colors. And so when I was getting to put together a portfolio for something like that, I actually really got to use my personal experience of what draws my attention, and it ended up the portfolio being one of the winning ones. So I think that was kind of just something where it really trains you to be confident. And it's not, and in tech, it's not just about your tech skills. It's about those soft skills. It's about, how do you draw from your own experiences? How do you communicate your ideas? And I think those are even the skills that even more than coding, because you can always learn something tech. You can just sit down, do the YouTube videos, come to our workshops. You can learn tech. It's harnessing your internal power of interpersonality and what makes you kind of different and stand out. So I think applying that to a tech role, and when I was going into Microsoft, that really carried me through. I didn't get much opportunity to talk to engineers, especially being remote. But it was the design of how was I going to create the send later button to kind of really connect with people and make it accessible and make it easy to understand what's the purpose of it, the way that it plays into work-life boundaries, which is something I'm passionate about. So a lot of those things kind of came into play of articulating my ideas to the fellow PMs and getting them to sign on with me and be like, yes, that's a great idea. We should do that. That was the job. It wasn't coding. So I think that is something that a lot of people underestimate, that in technology, it's all sitting at a computer and it's all the software engineering, but even software engineers are in meetings with me and we're exchanging ideas and what about this, what about this? So articulating your ideas and getting into the practice of working on different projects, I think is always one of the best ways you can learn how to transfer your strengths and skills to the tech world.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think what it really all comes down to, and what it's really interesting hearing so many different aspects and opinions about technology, is that so many times it really does come back to the core of humans and how humans are interacting with it, because we are the reason why so much of technology is the way it is. And I think it's really interesting to hear also about the passion behind it, because you can really see in so many different products and platforms and different products and things that people's passions really come out, and that is what is so beautiful about technology. But now that we have kind of finished our getting into tech part of our panel, we can open up for a little bit of Q&A if anyone has questions for each other. I know I do have a question that kind of arose a couple times about self-teaching and how a lot of what you actually are asked to do in different jobs, it really comes back to self-teaching. And I think that's a really interesting take that you don't really know about when you're in your classes and things like that. You think every aspect of every class is going to really propel you in a job, but a lot of it, and it does, but a lot of it, I think, really comes back to your ability to continuously learn and teach yourself as well. So if anyone had any questions relating to that or any kind of anything to say about that.
I will say just one thing that I've been realizing recently is that I have gotten into that trap, and I don't know where it came from, of looking at hard subjects and being like, I can't learn that, it's so hard. And I think we get into that trap a lot, especially as we go through college, because it's almost like the limited time. We understand that the more time you put into something, the more likely you're able to get it. But we're so limited on time that we kind of start changing, oh, I just wish I had more time to learn this and put the time into this, to I can't learn it at all. And I think I just realized that recently with just some of the things that I would look at in terms of financial literacy, reading more leadership books, me wanting to learn different languages like Korean and Japanese. Like, these were things that I've been dying to do and that I viewed as too hard. But now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, wait, I just don't have the time. So let me make some little time and start small. So now I've been learning Japanese for a couple of months. I've been picking up a book about financial literacy and listening to a podcast and putting in the research to find, okay, what are the little things I can do every day, or not even every day, not putting that pressure on myself, maybe every other day or every 3 days. What can I do to like keep learning and self-teaching? I think sometimes when we hear self-teaching, it becomes also intimidating as well. But kind of just, I think putting the research in and showing and proving to yourself how I can learn something that I think I can't learn, but you are an intelligent human being. You probably can. You just need to find the right game plan for you. It's the same thing with something like exercise. You have to figure out the right plan for you. It's personalized.
So that's actually really funny because 1, I speak Japanese, and 2, I'm fully a finance major. So basically Tara just needs to spend more time hanging out with me, and then she'll fulfill all of her goals. That's what we're learning. But actually something I do want to say is I think the best thing that you can do is take intro level classes for like the craziest subjects. So like, I would not say that I'm qualified to be a theoretical physicist. I think that's just a really aggressive statement. That being said, if I took intro to physics and like actually didn't do horrible in it, like maybe that would make me feel better about the subject as a whole. So like if you can, I would do that for like astronomy or something like that seems so monumental to like even, you know, get close to trying to achieve, and just take that like 100 level class.
Yeah, that's such good advice. I think definitely just dipping your toes in the water sometimes, just seeing that it is possible to learn something new. I know over quarantine, I was really, really intimidated by learning a new language, but it's something that I've always wanted to do. So I just started looking into different language services online. And ever since then, I've been slowly learning French. So it's just getting over that daunting aspect really that helps a lot of people propel, and that's how you get better at things. So awesome conversation. So now we're going to be moving on to our next topic, which is internships and experiences. And once again, if anyone has any questions throughout, feel free to drop it in the chat. So the first question is, have you had any internship experience? If so, how did you obtain it? And I'm going to pass this one off to Shannon.
Awesome, thanks. So I have had a couple internship experiences. I've had 2 at IU and 1 big one not at IU, but I actually really want to focus on my 2 at IU because I think they're very important stories to share. So my freshman year, I came onto campus and I was looking for something to do. You know, every freshman you want to get involved in everything and anything. And I got this email from this small little organization called CWIT that invited me to participate in an REU, or Research Experience for Undergraduate Women program. And part of this program was that I worked with someone on this campus and they mentored me and we worked on research together. And after a whole year working, presenting, and doing all that stuff, they actually wanted me and hired me back that next year. And in that same year, I ended up working for CWIT. Now I'm here as a social media intern. So one little email, one little link that I clicked on and signed up for landed me 2 jobs my sophomore year. And even though I didn't get paid my first year, it paid for an experience alone, awards I won from presenting, and it really let me build that bond with my boss and other coworkers in the industry, so that now I'm sitting here a senior. They trust me to handle big projects. They trust me to do one-on-one consultations with clients. And I really want to stress the importance of maybe not doing the CWIT's research, but if you do know anyone who's doing some sort of research in a field that you're interested in, those are great experiences to meet professionals in those fields, grow professionally as well. And you can even land a job from them as well and get relevant experience. So those were my internship experiences on campus. Still love working there to this day. And I'm going to pass it off to Catherine, who I know has a really great non-IU internship that she would like to share.
I definitely do. Thank you, Shannon. So I do also want to highlight my IU internship as well. So I'll kind of talk about both. But the non-IU internship that I mentioned earlier was when I worked at a company called Bonavita Architecture. They're located up in Fort Wayne, and my mom is on the local hospital board from where I'm originally from, and she heard that they were going to be doing an addition on the hospital and referred me to one of the architects that was there. And that's kind of how I got my foot in the door, and I was able to work on some really cool projects, and the main one on the hospital in my town, which is the hospital that I've driven past every single day or every whenever during my life, which is super weird that I got to work on that project. But just getting my foot in the door, I was able to get a really cool internship experience. And in addition to this, when I was hearing Shannon talk about her CWIT experience, I have to highlight it. It was great. My freshman year, I started a social media channel on Instagram for my professional kind of different posts, different things that I worked on like in school, and then I eventually kind of evolved to my interior design projects right now. That led me to getting an internship at the Eskenazi School, and it was unpaid, so it was a little bit less pressure to kind of work on that, get my foot in the door with social media, and that's actually how I felt confident enough to apply for the job at CWIT. And I can remember the day so clearly. I was in Wells Library applying to this position at the last second because I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do this. Like, I am good enough at this point. I am confident enough. And then I had an interview, and that's how I got my job at CWIT. But it's just really weird to think about how it all started back in freshman year when I made a simple Instagram profile for my professional stuff that I wanted to make. So I guess my advice would be to just do what you like, and hopefully opportunities are going to open from the different things that you put out into this world. But I think I'm going to pass it to Manvi for the next question.
Yeah, thanks. So our next question is, what was your biggest challenge with trying to obtain your internship, and what advice do you have for people in similar situations? And I'll ask Claire to answer that one.
Yeah, so when it was last summer, basically, the springtime, and I was looking for a summer internship. And as we all know, COVID had just hit back in March, pretty much. And so I kind of had only started looking for internships at that time, which was terrible timing because a lot of opportunities closed up and everything was kind of going remote and the world was kind of shifting. So that was like the circumstance that was probably a very big challenge to obtaining an internship. But aside from that, so I'm in the Kelley School of Business, and Kelley has a lot of different like traditional partners that are huge corporations that come and recruit at the school. But I kind of knew very early on that I wasn't really interested in kind of going into the corporate world and being with these large corporations that Kelley usually partners with. So my recruiting kind of looked a lot different than a lot of my peers. I was more interested in media and the entertainment industry. And so we don't really have a lot of connections to that industry here at IU. So I kind of had to do my recruiting on my own time and didn't have like those corporate companies coming in and trying to get students from IU. So what I ended up doing that really helped lead me to my internship with Career Contessa was ultimately just writing a letter of interest, is like the very technical term for it. But essentially, I wrote an email to the CEO and founder of a company called Career Contessa. So it's that career resource that's built inclusively for women that I mentioned in my intro. And basically, I'd been an admirer of this company for a couple years. They have a bunch of different articles like giving great career advice. And I've used that like throughout my college career. And I really kind of just admired the work that they did and how they kind of centered women in the job search. And so I sent this email kind of introducing myself to the founder and CEO, kind of explaining like what I loved about Career Contessa and how their resources had really helped me throughout college. And then I kind of ended the email being like, I would love to bring my experience working as an intern at IU, learning these different skills and my passion for career development for women to Career Contessa. And then essentially I asked if they had any job opportunities open that summer. So letters of interest are really good when you're interested in working for a company, but they don't necessarily have a role posted on their website that, that you can apply to that's right for you. So eventually she responded to me and she was super nice, and we set up like an informational interview. And eventually I ended up getting an internship that summer, like pretty last minute, but that's how I got into mine. So I would definitely say that if you're interested in working for a company, but there's no open roles, you can still get an in and still kind of make your own role by reaching out to someone who works at the company and just making a good first impression.
Yeah, thanks for that answer. That's some really good advice about just kind of taking initiative on your own. I think for me personally, the biggest challenge was just applying to places online, because I was kind of in a similar situation where the engineering program at IU is like pretty young. We just graduated our first class last year, and it's still pretty small. So a lot of the connections that we have with companies are kind of more on the computer science or software engineering side, whereas my interests are with more traditional engineering. So I think my hardest part was just kind of coming up with the bravery to like feel like I was qualified enough to apply to places. And again, also a challenge for me was the interview. I was super stressed about it because I was like, I didn't want to lose any of the momentum of just getting the interview offer. And I think my biggest piece of advice that helped me be successful on the interview side is being prepared. So just before the interview, kind of coming up with some ideas for answers that you would have, kind of organizing your thoughts about how you would introduce yourself and what your background is. Not so much that you're like reading off of a script or kind of seem a little too rehearsed, but just so that you kind of have an idea of what you're going to say going in.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what Manvi's talking about is kind of that like imposter syndrome that most minorities tend to face within any industry. So on that note, is there any professional events or like events that you think you went to that helped you throughout this journey, or, you know, become more comfortable?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about this. So last January, right before COVID even happened, I went to a conference in Texas called the Shift Conference. And it is an interior design conference. And we were going to send a couple of the students in varying like levels, like sophomore through senior. So I originally wasn't going to actually attend the conference, and somebody backed out at the last second, and I hopped on board that train. And I'm glad that I did, because this year it was all online. It was completely different. So I'm glad that I was able to experience that. But it was really cool to be able to meet a lot of different people in the interior design field who are in Texas, which is a completely different feel from Indiana even. So just getting like a different perspective, honestly, is what I really loved about that conference so much.
The same idea of conferences. I think that definitely there are so many amazing ones out there. I'm gonna let Claire Contos expand more about the Grace Hopper one. We went together, and that was a very emotional ride for both of us, but a very cool ride because we both ended up having internship offers when we left in very different ways. But I think for me personally, when I think about two types of professional events, really helped me get my footing. The first one is going to a lot of those informational sessions that a lot of recruiters put on my freshman year as early as I could. And even if you're a junior or senior now, you can still like benefit so much for just attending one of those. Only because I think for me, I didn't know how to have the conversation with the recruiter. I know that I kind of know my stuff. I know my answers if they were to ask something, but what are the questions to ask? What should I be asking? I don't know. First time I'm looking for a job. So kind of going to informational sessions and hearing what other smart classmates were saying and like, oh yeah, I'm interested in that too. But then I guess I'm also curious about this. Maybe I should ask a follow-up question to their question and kind of getting a good idea of like, what are the things that are almost in professional etiquette okay to ask, okay to investigate in a public setting versus maybe a one-on-one communication with your recruiter. I think that they really appreciate when you walk that line. So that is something that I've been learning. And then the second thing, along with the lines of conferences, besides Grace Hopper, I've just been someone who, I love the CWIT Summit. I think that's one of the best conferences you can go to for tech. I've been to all the Women in Business conferences. And I think one of the things that it says, a lot of these conferences are free. And especially it being virtual, it's easier to hop on. But even when it's like a day of just getting dressed up and going there, knowing that ultimately, especially if you're going alone, you can leave at any time you want. You can kind of show up at any time you want, unless it's like very structured. And I think those conferences of just hearing different professionals, hearing different women, powerful, ambitious women speaking about their career, I think that just helped me feel like I want to be up there one day. Like I personally want to be one of those people who come back to IU and give a conference and participate and give back that wisdom. And so that's where kind of helping create an image of what these different women look like also helped my confidence in my professional identity, which I definitely know that we are going to talk a little bit more in a bit about the difference between that professional and personal identity. So yes, and then I guess Grace Hopper was amazing. I actually did not get my internship from the Grace Hopper conference, but I was like negotiating my two like offers, I guess, like during that time. So Claire can definitely talk about more the actual Grace Hopper experience. So I hand it off to you, Claire Contos.
Thank you. So, just piggybacking off of what both of Catherine and Tara were saying, just about the confidence, I think going to different professional events, the biggest thing that I've seen throughout just the 4 years of going to different ones is just building up that confidence. And like Tara said, seeing those women, professionals just in these different roles saying that I one day am going to be able to be in that position, that it's very accessible for me to do that. So, but just going back, the different professional events, the IU Career Fair, like I said, I had an older sister who had been around the block. She was 2 years older at IU. So as soon as I was a freshman, I had a wonderful role model telling me, go to the career fairs. You may not know what to talk about. You may not have any experience yet, but just go, learn the lay of the land and shake some hands. And I think that made me so much more comfortable when I was actually recruiting my junior and senior year, because I didn't have that layer of being nervous, of not knowing really how it was laid out. So going to the IU Career Fairs, which is actually where I got my internship, both of my internships, one with Liberty Mutual, going into my junior year, and then my McDonald's internship going into my senior year, now full-time offer once I graduate. So the IU Career Fairs are amazing. They definitely got me to where I am today. Moving on to Grace Hopper, that is an incredible women's technology conference. It's held every year, and I got to go the year that it was in Orlando, and I was thankfully sent by CWIT, as Tara was as well, and it was one of the most incredible conferences experiences I've ever had. And you basically had the opportunity to network and talk to one of the biggest networking rooms in the US, all these different amazing companies. And I actually left there with a couple offers, which was absolutely incredible to have that opportunity. And then you also had the opportunity to listen to different panels, go to different workshops, kind of similar to how CWIT is, but at a much broader spectrum. And then lastly, I also was able to go to a hackathon. I was sponsored by IU to also go to that. It's called Technica. It's in Maryland. And that was an amazing experience as well. I got to work. You basically created a team while you were there, and I got to work with different individuals that I had never met before, went to different schools, and was able to basically code, design, create different things, and also network as well, because companies want to come, they want to talk to you, they want to gain new talent. So my biggest advice is just to go, never be afraid to just walk into the room and listen to what they have to say. So with that, we're going to finish up our internships and experiences part. And if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask, go ahead, either come off mute or throw it in the chat. And if not, we can move on to our last section. We have about 15 minutes left.
I think the only thing that I'd want to add while people are kind of thinking of questions they might have is just when we're talking about applying for different internships, I know we've talked about how it's hard to apply online or even at career fairs when you're considering different options. But I just wanted to add that I think it's really important that even if you don't hit every single requirement or qualification in a job description, to still apply and to still trust that you can kind of learn those more technical skills that we said are a little bit more self-taught. But most entry-level jobs and internships really just kind of require someone who can like communicate well and effectively, as well as just be professional and have that willingness to learn, because that's what internships are all about, just trying to learn more and get as much experience as you can. So I think that I would just add that women also are especially more likely not to apply to a job that they don't hit every qualification for than men are. So I just wanted to add, please feel free to apply to any job that you're interested in and know that you can learn those skills. But you might be surprised. You might land an interview that you didn't think you were qualified for.
That was my experience with CWIT, actually. I didn't know any coding languages, and here I was applying for the Women Who Code team. So that was something that I did, and then encouraging my friend to join the team. And then, you know, that sparked her whole interest in technology. She just told me because of that, because she took that risk, she then looked into Luddy. She then got into informatics. She then switched to information systems and Kelly. Like, a lot of her journey into technology was because of that one chance of maybe I could still get this even if I don't fit all the criteria. Now she's going to cybersecurity for the Army. So there we go. We love to see a woman in tech thriving.
Exactly. That was a great addition. I think one of the biggest things is just never to be afraid. And like Claire said, you may not check every single box. I definitely haven't for both of my internships that I completed. And if I didn't get over that hump of being too worried that I wasn't going to be able to accomplish everything that they asked, I wouldn't be where I am today. So awesome addition. So now we're going to move on to our final section of the panel. And this is going to be talking about personal selves, a little deep dive. And the first question is, what organizations are you involved in across campus? How did you learn about these organizations and start to get involved? And I'm going to pass that off to Catherine.
Awesome. So for organizations, my freshman year, I didn't get a whole lot of involved in like different things. like I wish I would have. But really for me, it started in my sophomore year. The organization that I am now involved in is called IIDA at IU Campus Center. And it's our interior design organization here at IU. But the way that I got involved was my sophomore year. They were looking for a sophomore rep, and essentially that's just kind of passing on information, a very low, like not a huge deal kind of position, just to get kind of introduced to the club, really. And nobody in my grade wanted to do it, and I hesitated for the longest time, and I kick myself now thinking about it. But I ended up, believing in myself and emailing that I did want to do it. And then my junior year, I ended up being elected vice president, and this year I am the president of our organization. So it's something that I hold near and dear to my heart. But it's very interesting to talk about how I got involved, and how I was so scared to like try something new, and now, look where I am now. So something that I just want to hit on, and we've kind of touched on a lot tonight, is just not being afraid, really doing something that you're interested in, even if you don't have all the qualifications, you might not know all of the information. Still put yourself out there and try new things. That is what has gotten me to where I am now, honestly. And I think I'll pass it off to Tara to talk a little bit more about her experience.
Sure. So freshman year, got really excited. I joined Harry Potter Society. I joined an intramural flag football team, but I cannot catch it. I can only run with it. So that was something very fascinating for me to learn. And so I was really involved in just a bunch of things in my honors floor, did some volunteering, did some writing, and I'm so sorry. As my team well knows, this happens to me a lot. Okay, so what I started to realize, though, was that kind of like a two-parter to what I said before about how we learn, how we say we can't, and going off what Catherine just said, too, about learning. I think another part of me restricting myself about these languages and writing, I'm a big creative writer. I could give a whole talk on how creative writing was the reason I got into tech. It was nothing to do with the actual technology itself. And so I think following your passions outside tech, even when they're not related to tech at all, is what's going to really elevate and give you a competitive advantage. So one thing that I do now, like even as I serve as this lead intern, I'm also in the Luddy Ambassador group. So I'm in Luddy all the time, talking to prospective students, practicing my Kelly skills, because I used to be so scared of public speaking. My legs would shake in person. Sometimes they still do when I'm giving a workshop or something. And that is intimidating to me because I want to come off confident, and I have this role that I need to be, but I put myself in uncomfortable situations to practice. And the other things I do, I'm a mentor. I love learning about people's stories. I love helping them figure out their problems. I think it's one of the best things that I can do, especially being in the unique position I am in my dual degree status, where I'm taking that extra year and making some hard decisions and helping them feel comfortable with those decisions if they need to make them. And then I actually applied and got into the creative writing department, like some higher up classes, even though I'm not a creative writing minor here at IU, which it's a excellent program. Great authors, professors. I'm always stunned. And that helps my ability to talk, my ability to create stories, innovative and compelling stories, which plays into computer science, plays into program management, plays into marketing. So it all connects. And now I'm trying to think about how can I use my French that I know? How can I use the Japanese I'm learning? And how can I build interesting stories with that and the cultural values? So it all connects. And I think that's something that I've been getting way more into, just saying, okay, I have an interest in it. I'm going to try it out. Who said that I need to commit an entire, year to it, or this budget to it? So I think that's something that, in terms of organizations, I'm still going to different organizations I've never been. I'm thinking of joining a hackathon maybe once. So I think I think the best place to look for opportunities to start with is be involved. I think people underrate be involved sometimes, because sometimes when I have no idea where to get started, I'm like, hackathon. And then I'll get like so many different types of things, but at least I have something to go off of. So if you haven't checked out Be Involved, great. Even if you're a senior, if you're looking for something different, something fun, something new, something cool to try, that is where I would go recommend. And then I think Manvi, you're next.
Yeah, that's really good advice about be involved. So I'm a huge band person. I've been in band since like elementary school. So I'm like in the marching 100 and the basketball band, and I'm in the like honorary band service sorority. So I think we were talking earlier about how it's like good to have extracurriculars in tech, but also like if you have interests outside of tech, that's like really good too, and you should value those and not kind of put them to the side because you know think you need to make room for like your career and stuff like that. And I will definitely say if you have interests outside of tech or outside of whatever your main focus is, put that on your resume, like maybe give it a line of your resume, because I don't think I've been in a single interview where I didn't bring up band somehow, or where the interviewer didn't like. I've had a couple interviewers who are like, oh, I played clarinet or I played whatever, and it's like a cute little like connection that you can make with people. So definitely value your interests that are outside of tech. Oh, and I do have the next question. So our next question is, what are some ways that you manage stress and your mental health? And I'll ask Claire this question.
Yeah, of course. So I'll be the first to admit that this past year has been like especially tough with managing mental health, as well as just trying to balance school and my part-time job, and then extracurricular activities, as well as looking for a full-time job after I graduate in May. But I was super lucky to kind of have the support system of my siblings. So my siblings have also kind of been struggling with mental health this year, especially my brother, who's kind of isolated from us. He lives in California. And so I was a little nervous about like talking to them about it because we don't like talk about mental health too much, like in my family. And so I eventually on Zoom, like a couple weeks ago, I just kind of like told them that I was struggling a little bit. And then it was actually super helpful because like all of us could relate to that feeling of just feeling overwhelmed and just burnt out. And so they kind of helped me build like a list of things that I could try to start doing like in my daily life, as well as like a weekly ritual to kind of help me just like focus on my mental health, carve time out to take care of myself, and just really like be okay with like understanding that it's going to get better, but I have to take steps myself to kind of like manage everything that I have going on. And so like a couple of those things that really have helped me are just kind of making time for myself. So whether that means like working out a few times a week, or even if I don't maybe feel like doing like strenuous exercise, going on a walk, getting outside, getting some sunshine, as well as I've gotten into meditation this past year. So I've really kind of found that like meditating in the morning has helped with just like centering me for the day, as well as just like giving me a good start for the day. But then I will say that if you don't really feel comfortable talking to maybe your siblings or your family, or maybe your friends, I would definitely say to recommend taking advantage of the resources that we have on campus. So I know that all IU students who have paid some fee, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but we get 2 students. So I would definitely recommend going to them if you don't feel comfortable going to your immediate support network. And I think I'll pass off to Shay to add anything.
Absolutely. I'll have to caveat all of this with like, I don't think I have it together. I don't think anyone has figured out the perfect balance of mental health. It's really hard. All of that being said, I've tried basically everything under the sun, and here's what I think works. For a computer science major, I am fully a digital minimalist. If I don't have to be on the screen, I won't be on one. I just don't think in our society, the way that we use a lot of our technologies is really beneficial to you. So like, for example, I don't do the social medias on my phone. If anything, it'll sometimes be on my laptop every once in a while if I want to check in. But usually that doesn't really happen because now I've trained myself to like not need the scrolling. I don't watch TV unless I like really, if something's like fascinating to me, like more often than not, I'll go like audio. So like I'll, listen to something that's like more interesting. just because I can't deal with more screens. It's not fun for me. And I think a lot of people are probably feeling that same way. Other tips and tricks that I've learned, I hide my self view on Zoom, which is good and bad because sometimes it's like I do have RBF and it becomes very apparent. But it's really nice because not staring at yourself is so helpful in terms of like not feeling as burnt out. If you can't see your reactions, it just feels like a more natural conversation. Some of the other things that I like to do is my phone is consistently on Do Not Disturb. You have to call me twice if you actually want to get to me. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being slightly unreachable. The people that you should be surrounding yourself with or talking to should make the effort. And so for you, I think sometimes it can be really helpful to just take periods of time where you're like, I don't want to be reached today. But yeah, all of those plus meditation, everything Claire said was great. You can do this. Just gotta one day at a time.
Yes, thank you. And I know we're around time, so we dropped the eval link in case you gotta go. Just please make sure you fill that out because it helps us create more insightful and cool events for more catered to what you're interested in. But I do want to ask we're gonna have Shannon wrap us up here. So do you have any tips, Shannon, about what you've learned along the way about how to manage that work-life balance, especially what Shay and Claire were hitting on earlier?
Yes, definitely. Shay, that is a great tip. Being slightly unreachable, I think I'm going to have to try that for a couple of days. I don't know if I can do it fully, but definitely maybe for like a day or two on the weekends. But just to make this quick, we are people. We have lives. And even on our busiest days, one big tip that I really like, and actually this was a question I answered in an interview, and they really loved the answer to this, was take 1 hour out of your day just for yourself. That doesn't include cooking, that doesn't include eating, showering, whatever chores you need to do. 1 hour a day, whether it be to watch your favorite TV show, knit something, draw, meditate, sit, just an hour for yourself, even on your busiest days. Because those are the times that really allows you to take your mind away from what you're working on, to de-stress and to focus on yourself. So even if professionally you're working really hard, you have midterms coming up, you're super swamped, that hour a day will remind you a little bit about who you are, can help you refocus so you don't burn out as quickly, and just give you 1 hour to enjoy your day, because we don't know how many days we have here, and we are here in college, working in life. Taking 1 day to yourself is just really, not 1 day, 1 hour to yourself every day to just focus on yourself is just so important, especially for mental health. And another tip that's not exactly work-life balance, but is just a tip in general for getting into tech, Google is your best friend. Just Google everything. If you have a question, can't figure out how to code, need to know how long to boil your pasta water for, I don't care. Just Google everything. And that can be really helpful. So like if you, especially in like work and life, and you're asking a lot of questions or you don't know things, just Google it. Don't feel ashamed in Googling it. That's my favorite thing to do, is just Google any question I have, learn something new, practice something. And then even for like coding, I don't have to spend all my time writing code. Someone already wrote it. I don't have to, but it's just a great tool that's out there as well. And yeah, just because we're over time, I would want to go a little bit longer, but we're 2 minutes over, and I want to respect you and your time. And hopefully you take time to just an hour to yourself every day.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that, Shannon. I think that was a great way to round out this whole discussion. And I'm definitely leaving with a lot of new insights and a lot of new things that I personally want to try in my life. I really appreciate everyone for coming together. This was such a fun night, and really thank anyone that had the ability to stop by or is here tonight with us. Make sure to fill out that evaluation link. If you're able to, we will definitely send out the recording and an email follow-up. But thank you again for everyone's insights, and have a wonderful night.